Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a trip that starts in a very grounded, very real place, a storefront ministry in the Bronx, New York.
hmm
But, and I am not exaggerating here, we end up somewhere in the fifth dimension.
It is definitely one of the most unique trajectories we've ever covered.
Hmm.
We're looking at a stack of materials centered around a service from Way to Life Ministries.
Okay.
And we're specifically breaking down a video from the YouTube channel of one Jerry Fast Feet Fontanez.
Fast Feet Fontanez. That is an absolute Hall of Fame nickname right out of the gate.
It sets a tone, doesn't it? The video is titled simply Sermon.
Sounds generic.
Right, but what happens inside is anything but. You
Yeah.
get this fascinating blend of like old school, high energy gospel worship mixed with, well, with what I can only describe as metaphysical, almost sci-fi concepts.
Sci-fi concepts, yeah. We're talking about frequencies, vibration.
Looping timelines, hacking reality with your voice.
It's just this wild fusion. On one hand, you have the traditional church service stuff, the music, the pews, the announcements.
Right.
But the actual theological argument from the guest speaker, Dr. Kelly Scott, it feels like a masterclass in, spiritual quantum mechanics.
It really does. It's basically a lecture on how human speech functions as a piece of technology to alter the physical world.
And that's our mission for this deep dive, right? We're going to unpack that whole mechanism.
Exactly. We need to look at why they believe words can override what they call the third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
What this year of Russ is that they keep mentioning, and maybe the most surprising thing of all,
I think I know what you're going to say.
why you are absolutely not supposed to say Happy New Year to Dr. Kelly Scott in January.
That is such a specific rule. And the reason behind it is huge. It completely flips how you look at the calendar.
It does.
But before we get to the dimensional travel, we have to set the scene. The source material kicks off with just incredible energy. You have Jerry Fontanez Fast Feet himself, I assume, leading the worship.
And it's important for you to get the texture of this worship. This isn't polished, studio-produced stuff.
Not at all.
It's raw. It's improvisational. It's happening in that room for that room.
Right. They're singing classics like Jesus in Me and This Little Light of Mine, but they're remixing it on the fly. At one point, they're just singing Jesus in Me, Jesus in You, and just looping that phrase, building this really intense atmosphere. It feels like they're trying to generate something.
In this context, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Worship isn't just a warm-up act to get people seated.
Right.
It's about shifting the atmosphere. They're trying to change the frequency of the room. We'll hear that word a lot. They're trying to elevate the collector mindset out of the Bronx and into something else.
And that context is so important because of where they are. This is not some mega church in a wealthy suburb. This is the Bronx.
Right.
And right after the music, the senior pastor, Pastor D, gets up and she paints this very specific kind of gritty picture of their community.
She does. She talks about the need to fortify the area. She specifically mentions situations and mental illness plaguing the neighborhood.
So it's very grounded. She's not talking about abstract spiritual warfare.
No, she's talking about survival in a tough environment.
It sounds like she views the church as a kind of fortress.
Exactly. And this is where we see the first practical application of their faith. Pastor D announces a Daniel fast.
Okay, let's pause on that. For anyone listening who might not know that term, what exactly is a Daniel fast?
Well, it comes from the book of Daniel in the Bible. The story is Daniel refuses the king's rich food and wine. He eats only vegetables and drinks water.
Okay.
So practically, for a set period in this case, from January 24th to the 31st, the congregation is told to remove meat from their diet. Just vegetables and fruits.
So is it just a detox, like a health kick?
I mean, physically, sure, it works that way.
Mm.
But the stated goal here is spiritual fortification. She says, in order for God to do what he used to do in this area of the Bronx, we got to be fortified.
So they're fasting to prepare for an all-night prayer on the 31st.
An all-nighter, yes.
Yeah.
They see this physical discipline as necessary armor to stand against the struggles in their neighborhood. It shows they see themselves as active combatants in a spiritual war.
That raises the stakes a lot. This isn't just about feeling good on a Sunday.
Precisely. And that sets the stage perfectly for the guest speaker, Dr. Kelly Scott. Now, before she even takes the mic, Pastor D shares this backstory that's so important for establishing her authority.
You can't just have anyone walk in and start talking about other dimensions.
Exactly. And, this part was heavy. Pastor D talks about her late husband.
Right.
She says Dr. Scott has been in her life for about 15 years, but the key moment was when Pastor D's husband was sick. She says Dr. Scott ministered to him in his final hours.
She says she helped him speak in tongues and take his stand with Christ before he passed.
And then she calls Dr. Scott a mighty warrior of God. That's a serious endorsement. It tells the congregation, basically. This woman knows how to navigate the boundary between life and death.
Well,
So when she starts talking about reality and dimensions, they are primed to listen. She's not just a theorist. She's been in the trenches with their pastor.
and when Dr. Scott gets up, she does not waste any time. She goes right into her core thesis.
Yeah, the sermon is called The Power of Our Words Unlock Miracles. And she builds her whole argument on two foundational texts.
Okay.
The first is John 6.63, where Jesus says, "The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life."
Mm-hmm.
And the second is Proverbs 18.21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue.
Now, hold on. I've heard power of positive thinking. I've read The Secret. But Dr. Scott is taking this a step further, isn't she? She's not just saying, be optimistic.
No, and this is the crucial distinction. She's not speaking metaphorically at all. She argues that words act as a literal mechanism and interface with reality.
Okay.
And she introduces this concept of looping.
Looping. It sounds like something from a time travel movie. How does she explain that?
She warns the congregation that if you speak negatively about lack, sickness, the past, you loop yourself. She says if you loop your words, it keeps you trapped in a dimension.
Trapped in a dimension. That is intense language for just complaining about a bad day.
It is. Specifically, she calls it the third dimension, or the 3D timeline. Her point is that by describing your current bad situation, you're essentially hitting reset on it, forcing yourself to live it over and over. You're creating a loop.
That's actually terrifying. So if I say I'm broke or I'm always tired, I am literally commanding the universe to keep me broke and tired.
It's a theology of extreme personal responsibility. She uses the fruit analogy from Proverbs. They that love it shall eat the fruit thereof.
Meaning you will eat the fruit of what you say.
Literally, you speak death, you get death. You speak life, you get life. Your reality is a direct output of your vocal input.
So if I'm stuck in traffic and I say, I hate this traffic, I'm just cementing it into my reality.
According to her logic, yes. You're agreeing with the problem, which gives it permission to stay.
This leads us to the terminology that really grabbed me. You mentioned the third dimension, but she contrasts that with the fifth dimension. And honestly, hearing a preacher in the Bronx talk about arising into the fifth dimension was a real aha moment for me. It felt like we'd crossed over into sci-fi.
It is a fascinating blend of kind of quantum-sounding language and theology. For Dr. Scott, the third dimension is the natural world.
Okay.
It's the realm where we see poverty, sickness, and where she says Satan rules.
Yes.
It's the default setting.
So 3D is the struggle. It's the Bronx with the situations Pastor D mentioned.
Precisely. The fifth dimension, in her framework, is the supernatural realm. It's God's realm.
Right.
But, and she's very clear on this, it's not a physical place you travel to. You don't die to get there. She says God lives within. So accessing it is an internal state shift.
It sounds like an operating system upgrade. You're trying to uninstall Windows 3D and install 5D.
That is a great analogy. She's urging the congregation to stop operating on the 3D OS, which is full of bugs and viruses, and switch to the 5D OS.
And how do you do that? She goes way back to Genesis to explain the science of it.
She does. She references Genesis chapter 1. Most people know, let there be light. But she analyzes the mechanics of that. She points out the earth was without form and void, a blank canvas.
A blank canvas in the supernatural.
Right. And then she focuses on the line, the Spirit of God moving upon the face of the waters. She explicitly interprets that movement as a vibration and a frequency.
There are those words again. Vibration, frequency. It sounds like she's trying to bridge ancient text and modern physics.
She is. She argues God created the physical world from the supernatural by using spoken words to create a frequency. And here's the kicker.
Okay.
Because humans are made in God's image, she argues we have that exact same creative ability. We can call things from the supernatural, the 5D, into the natural, the 3D.
So when I speak, I am not just communicating. I'm literally vibrating the atmosphere to pull things into existence.
According to her, yes. She references Romans 4.17, calling those things that be not as though they are. She explains that most people make the mistake of describing what is, I am broke, I am sick.
Which just loops it. It validates the 3D reality.
Exactly. The 5D approach is to describe the reality you want as if it's already here. You don't say, I want to be healed. You say, I am healed.
It's basically speak it to make it.
That's a good way to put it. She believes two parallel dimensions are operating at all times. You choose which one you live in, by what comes out of your mouth.
This brings us to the calendar. Because this idea of choosing your timeline gets very specific when she talks about the new year.
Yes. She tells the congregation flat out, when people say to me, Happy New Year, I don't respond.
Imagine saying Happy New Year to your pastor and just getting the cold shoulder. That feels so harsh.
It does, until you understand her logic.
Yeah.
She cites Exodus 12.2. God establishes the start of the year in the spring around Passover.
So January 1st means nothing to her.
It's worse than nothing. She argues that celebrating the new year in the dead of winter is aligning yourself with a 3D timeline. She says nothing prospers in December, January.
So by celebrating it, you're aligning with death.
Essentially, yes, you're looping yourself back into a natural dead timeline instead of God's time.
That's fascinating. She's rejecting the entire Gregorian calendar as a 3D trap. So when does the year start for her?
In the spring. But she also zooms out. She identifies the current time not as 2024 or 2025, but she references the Hebrew calendar. She says we're in the year 5786.
And she calls it something specific, the Year of Rus.
Yes, the year of Rus. Now, this is phonetic from the audio, but she connects this year, 5786, to the Gregorian year 2026. She says this timeline co-aligns with 2026.
Wait, so while the rest of us are living in the present, she is spiritually living in the future in the spring of 2026, in the Year of Rus.
Exactly. And the practical application is to reject December-January thinking. Reject the idea that it's cold and nothing is happening. You're supposed to align with the new thing God is doing. It's another way to break the loop.
It is incredibly consistent. If you believe you can hack reality with your words, then you shouldn't let a calendar on the wall dictate your spiritual timeline.
Right. If you say it's January, it's cold and depressing, you get cold and depressing. If you say it's spring in the spirit, you get new life.
Now we have to talk about where this service lands, because after all the talk of dimensions and timelines, the rubber meets the road with finances.
Manifestation almost always ends up there, and this is no exception. Towards the end, Dr. Scott guides them into a very specific affirmation about money.
She tells them to repeat, "Wealth and riches are in my house. I don't serve money. Money serves me."
That phrasing is so critical, money serves me. It flips the power dynamic. In the 3D world, poverty might feel like a master. She's telling them to verbally demote money to the status of a servant.
And then Pastor D jumps in with a pop culture comparison that I just loved. She brings up Cardi B.
She does. She mentions Cardi B and Louis Vuitton. And her argument is, look, if secular figures can be blessed like that, why shouldn't God's people be blessed?
That's a very relatable comparison.
But notice she ties it specifically to the house of God. The wealth isn't just for personal luxury. It's to support the ministry. She shares this vision of a cathedral of hope.
Describe that vision. Because they're in a storefront in the Bronx.
Yes, but she describes seeing a multi-floor building in a place that looks like Manhattan. A massive vision, a cathedral.
She is calling those things that be not as though they are.
Exactly. She's practicing what Dr. Scott preached. She's describing the cathedral in Manhattan while standing in the Bronx. She's refusing the 3D limitation of their current building.
And then comes the offering. And even the instructions for the offering are unique.
The elbow.
Yes. She says, right on your elbow for the house of God.
I suspect that might have just been a playful moment, maybe a slip of the tongue for envelope. But honestly, it adds to that improvisational, high-energy atmosphere. It's not a rigid script.
And while they're giving, they're singing this anthem, "Blessed in the city, blessed in the field."
Sickness and poverty must cease. It's the perfect musical summary of the entire sermon. They're singing the fifth dimension over their finances.
It really is a complete system. You start with the music, you detox the body with the fast, you reprogram the mind with the sermon, and then you act on it with the offering.
And it all centers on that one core belief. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a creator of your reality, armed with the technology of speech.
So let's connect this to the listener. Whether you believe in the Year of Rest or not, what's the takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is about the discipline of language. Dr. Scott presents a worldview where there is no such thing as idle chatter. Every word is a command. It forces you to ask, how much of my own bad luck am I reinforcing just by talking about it?
The self-fulfilling prophecy on steroids.
Exactly. If you wake up and say, oh, I'm so tired, this day is going to be terrible, you are priming your brain, and in her view, the universe, to deliver that terrible day. You're looping the tiredness.
And the alternative is to be almost delusional in your positivity.
Or, as they would see it, faith-filled. It's about having the discipline to speak to the solution, not the problem. shifting your focus from the 3D obstacle to the fifth dimension outcome.
It's powerful stuff. It makes you want to tape your mouth shut just to be safe.
Or just be very, very intentional about what comes out of it.
So we've gone from a storefront in the Bronx, through the frequencies of Genesis, dodging the loop of the third dimension, and arrived in the eternal spring of 2026.
Quite a trip.
Here's a final thought for you to chew on. Dr. Scott suggests that describing your current problems only solidifies them. So here's a challenge. If you were strictly forbidden from speaking about your struggles or your annoyances for just 24 hours, and you could only speak about the outcome you wanted as if it had already happened, how would your conversation change? And more importantly, how would your mindset change by tomorrow morning?
That is a fifth dimension experiment worth trying.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you in the next dimension.